Hello everyone, welcome to week one. This week there'll be some introductory materials that are going to kind of set the table for us for the remainder of the summer. After this week we'll get into more kind of specific, different groups and the different aspects of religious terrorism. But this week is much more just kind of an introductory, kind of set the table kind of thing. So you'll see that there's three readings for this week. Juergensmeyer 2006, Hoffman 2006, and Juergensmeyer 2017. The main focus of this video discussion will be the Juergensmeyer 2006 book chapter, because I think it gives a pretty good framework for thinking about how the remainder of the materials for this course kind of fit together. Hoffman 2006, if you've taken classes with me before, that's from his Inside Terrorism book. And he gives a really good kind of overall discussion of religion and terrorism, who's involved in it, etc. And then Juergensmeyer 2017 is the first chapter in the book for this week, and it's kind of a nice introduction to his approach to religion and terrorism, and also his approach to the book. So please be sure to read both of those in addition to Juergensmeyer 2006, which is what we'll discuss in more detail here. So this Juergensmeyer chapter discusses religious terrorism from three perspectives: that religion does not cause terrorism, religion does cause terrorism, and religion does not cause terrorism but is problematic. And I like this article because it kind of gives you, if you want to think about things that way for the rest of the semester, I think it gives a really nice way to kind of think about the different topics that we're talking about as we go through. So first, let's talk about how religion does cause terrorism. So this particular view is that religion creates a limited supply of sacred resources that humans have to compete for. So when you talk about scarcity of resources, I mean, that's hardly a new concept when you're discussing conflicts. People have had conflicts over resources for probably since the dawn of time. From the first time two groups of people came together, there's some resources they're going to need. They've had battles over that. So this concept of scarcity of resources isn't really new, but here we're talking about sacred resources. We're not talking about food and water kind of stuff. We're talking about things like God's favor, God's blessings, salvation, right? Those kind of sacred resources. So not everybody can have them, and you have to earn them. So from this view, it sees violence as inherently built into the structure of religious commitment. So I guess needless to say, this is a somewhat controversial viewpoint. But as we'll see throughout this course, there's many different religious faiths that have been associated with violence at different points in their histories. Now, most religious people do not readily accept that their faith could lead to violence. Most Muslims, most Christians, most Jews, they all regard their religions as religions of peace, or Hindus or whatever religion you want to talk about. Most people that adhere to these religions don't view them as violent. Most of them view them as religions of peace. So then you have this point of view, and it gets a little bit more mired, when you think about how religion and politics intermingle. So certainly, the last, several years for sure, the most recent discussions have surrounded Islam and its relationship to politics and Sharia law and the violence associated with that. But if you think about other religions, people have been intermingling religion and politics for thousands of years. Think about the history of Europe. All throughout the history of Europe, Christianity and politics have been closely related. Just think about the Crusades, right? Or the different violent conflicts that erupted over Protestant versus Catholic. It's still happening in Britain, with the IRA and all that kind of stuff. So all these religious traditions, if you look at them over time, there's always been some intermingling of politics and religion, and it ends up in the expression of violence. Look at Judaism as well, Hinduism, all of those have at one point or another intermingled politics and has some violence associated with it. And if we look at America, I mentioned Europe, but in America, there's also quite a few examples of, Christians that have committed terrorist acts as well. You think about abortion bombers, there's Christian identity, there's all these kind of different Christian sects, so So really, if you look at any type of religion, you can find examples of where people adhering to those religions or a form of that religion have committed violent acts, over history. So whether or not religion actually is the cause of those, the debate is going to continue. The debate really is religion causing the terrorism itself, or is religion being used to justify violence for political gain? All right, so the second argument is that religion does not cause terrorism. Now, this argument states that religion is not actually responsible for the acts of terrorism, that religion is actually a victim of terrorism, or is simply irrelevant. So Meyer discusses Pape in his article, and Pape did a study looking at suicide bombers, and he found that most suicide bombers are actually motivated by religion, but rather by a motive to defend territory, or gain freedom. Now Pape does admit that religion can intensify this motivation to defend territory, but not that religion is the main motivator. The main motivator, again, is to defend territory or to gain freedom. But he does ignore some of the other movements throughout the world where religion may have a more prominent role than the ones that he's discussing. So in his discussion, it kind of leads us into these two other perspectives, secular perspective, and then the religion is irrelevant perspective. So the secular perspective pretty much states that religion is not responsible for violence and that it's used to mask other conditions that are more likely the cause of violence, such as economic conditions, social conditions, things like that. So it's used as a kind of a cover for these other aspects that are probably causing the violence more likely than religion. So then the other perspective is that religion is basically an innocent bystander to violence, and that religion is opposed to it, and then is corrupted by those that are using it for violence. So this view states that while there may be religious aspects to violence, those aren't true forms of that religion. All right, so the third perspective then is religion is not the problem, but is problematic. And this perspective kind of takes the middle ground. Okay, so and like most things in life, the answers are rarely black and white. Rarely is something yes or something no. A lot of times it's always somewhere in the middle, right? So this third perspective is more of a middling position. So from this perspective, the things that cause the tension or cause the conflict are usually economic or social, but at some point then this conflict becomes religionized. So you have a secular conflict that comes to take on a sacred view, and then therefore it becomes a sacred conflict, right? It's no longer a secular conflict, now it's a sacred conflict. So oftentimes these conflicts that become religionized have at their core a sense of loss of identity, a sense of loss of control. People are somehow feeling like they've lost control over their lives or lost control of whatever it is they're trying to hang on to. And obviously that is not a religious cause or a religious problem, right? That happens all the time. But religion, as well as other ideologies like secular nationalism, they provide ready responses and ready solutions to these problems, right? If people are feeling this frustration, they're feeling this humiliation, right? Where do people go a lot of times? A lot of times they go to religion, right? Or they find some other ideology that speaks to them and the problems that they're having. So at this point, you have these social, cultural, and economic problems that are really being experienced in very personal ways. And this is where religion can begin to become more involved, okay? And when this happens, these feelings of frustration or loss of self can begin to take on more tones of good versus evil. And they become now part of this, what is kind of considered like this sacred conflict or cosmic war now, such as those that are portrayed, in many different religious traditions, where this person now becomes a soldier in this war of good versus evil. So when activists begin to draw religion into these type of situations, religion becomes much more problematic. So how does religion do that? Well, religion brings in these aspects to conflicts that aren't there initially, right? You have these very secular conflicts, over territory or economic conditions, social conditions, whatever they are, that aren't religious in nature. But religion brings in other aspects. So what religion does is it personalizes the conflict and provides personal rewards for people, such as redemption, salvation, when before, it would only be social benefits, right? So then religion also brings in this concept of cosmic war, and we have a whole chapter on cosmic war in the book that we'll read in a couple of weeks. So then you have this conflict that's now a spiritual battle, good versus evil, where those on one side of the conflict are evil and they're demonized. And then this makes the war sacred, or the conflict sacred, rather than secular. And when that happens, it allows people to more easily kill people or attack people or use violence against people, because now they're no longer just opponents, right? They're evil and they're demons, and there's all these things that are very different than just what a secular conflict would have been. So they now feel like they're doing the work of whatever God it is that they serve. Right? It's no longer just about themselves or about their personal situations. Now it's got this whole much bigger perspective of it's good versus evil. Whether it's Saint Michael casting Satan out of heaven or whatever cosmic war they're thinking about. That's how they begin to view these conflicts. So you have the three perspectives. Religion does cause terrorism, religion does not cause terrorism, or religion doesn't cause terrorism but is problematic. So think about those, as we go through the class, and think about them today as you read the other stuff as well. So like I say, this is a really good kind of introduction and kind of broad framework, to kind of think about things for the rest of the semester. If you have questions, please let me know, and I'll see you all next week.